All right, hello everybody. So, before we start, how many of you are game composers? Okay. Sound designers? Okay. Game developers? Game developers who also write music? Good. Don't raise your hands because you can't. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about the Mick Gordon Doom Eternal situation. Are you vaguely aware with the situation? I'll give you a very brief, too long did not read version just so we can follow along some of the stuff that I'm gonna talk about. So Doom Eternal OST released April 19th, 2020. That's almost 3 years ago. Actually, it is 3 years ago. Some people started saying it doesn't meet the Doom standards and the Mick Gordon standards. Sorry, that's my computer. I don't know why it does this. It shouldn't. The press picked up on the situation. Gordon himself in social media said that there may have been some issues. On May 4th, Marty Stratton, who is the id Software studio director, is it Marty? Are you here? No. Okay. He posted an open letter on Reddit, essentially explaining the situation, but essentially putting all the blame on Mick Gordon. And the press picked that up. 2 years later, Mick Gordon posted on his Medium page a very long statement explaining the events from his point of view and telling quite a different story, okay? A couple of disclaimers before we move on. First of all, I am here, I have a 1-month-old baby. This means that despite this being very scripted, doesn't mean that it's very good, because I have barely slept the last month, okay? So apologies for that. Second of all, I'm not affiliated with Mick Gordon. He doesn't know I exist. I'm not here speaking for him. And I'm not actually going to shit on Bethesda or id Software or praise Mick Gordon or whatever. I'm gonna just present some stuff that are publicly available. Everyone can see it, right? I'm just pivoting from these stuff to paint a picture about the state of the game composers in the industry, all right? Okay, if at any point you feel personally offended or attacked by anything I have to say, please remember that I don't give a shit about you. And the last thing is I'm going to use humor, like I did 5 seconds ago, exaggeration, and profanity for sure, to put a point across. It's a persona that is talking to you. I'm not an angry man. I'm just, painting a picture here, okay? And with that, my name is Christodoulou, and the gaming industry can go fuck itself. Oh, no. No! Oh, my God, why? Let's try it again. Gaming industry, why do you fuck me? Any metal heads? It's going to be long. All right. That was a piece. Sorry, I cut off the outro. That was a piece by Mick Gordon from Doom Eternal. Can you imagine working on such material for like 2 or 3 years and mixing and producing it? It's very hard. Keep that in mind. It will come up later. I ripped the piece from Doomslayer's channel on YouTube. It has 24 million views, and it's titled Mick Gordon, The Only Thing They Fear Is You, Doom Eternal OST High Quality. And if you notice there at the bottom, it says Justice for Mick Gordon, to which I will add Justice for Han. Nobody knows what this joke was here. I love this. Okay, so if you're anything like me, which is a person who actually gives a shit about video game music, there are two problems in this thing. First of all, I had to get this from YouTube. Why? Because the Doom soundtrack, the Doom Eternal soundtrack, is not available anywhere for sale. It's not even streaming, which is crazy. The second thing, this is not Mick Gordon's channel. It's just a random guy, Doomslayer. And I speculate that in this case, Mick Gordon wouldn't upload the music in his channel because for legal reasons. But it doesn't mean that if he had, other people wouldn't have re-uploaded the material, right? This is very typical. And it goes without saying that this is not legal either. For the audio enthusiasts in here, I did check about, because it says high quality, I did check. It peaks at +2 dB, so I'm not sure how this built-in distortion accounts for high quality. Anyway, the upload has 24 million views over 2 years. And as I said, Doom Eternal is not streaming. A lot of people have to resort listening to this, okay? If they hadn't, I'm assuming a lot of those streams would have been on Spotify and other platforms. To give you a point of reference, my entire discography on Spotify has 60 million views from 2015, not from the 2 years ago, and not on one track. If I had one track that had 24 million plays on Spotify over the last 2 years, I would not be here, except for vacation maybe, all right? Now, do you actually know who I am? Anyone here that knows who I am? Anybody here follow? Okay, just one person. Okay, two. Great. Anybody following me on Twitter? I'm going to assume no. Okay, so nobody here has called me an asshole on Twitter because I've said that composers should be treated better, but after this talk, we can change that. I am Christodoulou. This is my first game project on 2012, so I've been writing professionally music for games for about 11 years. Nobody has played this game, of course. Maybe some of you know my work for Hopu and the Risk of Rain series. And I don't know, I think that's me in a nutshell. We don't need to focus about, I'm just a guy writing music, and I care about music for some reason that at this point is beyond me. All right, so what I'm gonna talk about here today, okay? I'm gonna talk about the place of the composer in the gaming industry. And when I say place, I'm not gonna talk about the composer's job. I'm going to talk about, philosophically, the social contracts, if you want, the relationship that the composer has, first of all, with game developers and publishers, that is our clients. Secondly, with the media and other major gaming-related organizations, such as this one. And the audience, and I'm including content creators in that, and it doesn't matter, because essentially they spawned from the audience. So that's the reason that I'm kind of having them in there. In any case, those distinctions are fluid in the real world. Gaming folk can exist in either and all categories, and which is one of the reasons there's a strong dialectical relationship between them, meaning that each group is being fed and feeding the other, both in terms of ideas and both in terms of individuals. And now if you're wondering where the composer fits in all this, the answer is none of the above, at least my answer. Because the more I work in this industry, the more I feel that the composers kind of sit outside it. And this can be directly observed in the relationship with game developers, because in like 99% of the cases, we are hired guns. We are not part of the company. Most of us are freelancers. Okay, but we can more or less see it in the other categories too. Let's see. So let's talk about the situation, right? So on April 19, 2020, that's the day that the soundtrack was released, the Twitter account Doominal Cross posts the following thread, which you will allow me to read to you in its entirety because it is hilarious. Here's, well, we'll see about that. Here's a comparison between the original BFG division from Doom 2016's official soundtrack on the left and the BFG 2020 remix from today. Notice how the wavelengths, that's first time. In BFG 20, do you see any wavelengths here? If anyone who has seen wavelengths here is wrong, it's a waveform. In BFG 2020, from a nearly perfect straight bar, the original versus the original has more definition. Now, maybe you're unfamiliar with audio mixing. This is a great sentence. And you're thinking, okay, there's clearly a visual difference, but how does that translate to what I'm hearing? Basically, when there's more definition in the wavelengths, there's greater dynamic range between the instruments, debatable. In the case of music, dynamic range gives instruments more breathing room, so to speak, while there are exceptions. In most cases, you don't want instruments to compete with each other for dominance. I'll take it. You want them to harmonize together to create new and interesting sounds. Fine. So what's happening is, in the left image from Doom 2016, the instruments have greater dynamic rates, impossible to see in a wavelength. Is shown by the wavelength not being as compressed together. Again, that's impossible to see from a wavelength. However, the image on the right from Doom Eternal is not this case. The wavelengths on each instrument have been compressed to the point where they are, on each instrument, he sees each of the instruments in the wavelengths, where they are playing back at the same volume, with the exception of the occasional peak, whatever. These heavily compressed mixes were then thrown together and had their combined master volume lowered. It's baffling what he means here, what creates those seemingly perfect parallel edges throughout. And I will cut to the last one, which is the biggest humble brag I've ever read in my entire life. Mick Gordon is a far more talented audio engineer than me, and it's not even close, and that's what makes this especially frustrating. Okay, dude, I expect much better from him. Again, the music is phenomenal, yeah, okay, but the mix is terrible. All right, so this tweet, in the words of Dominal Cross, really blew up, didn't it? Yeah, it did. Part of its popularity comes from the fact that it was embedded in, I say several here, but it's wrong. It's in every article that wrote about the matter had this tweet embedded in it. So I'm going to read from Kotaku, and I have the screenshot because I want to prove to you that what I'm reading is actually written on an article. And it says, a video game soundtrack release is normally a straightforward thing. I'm sorry, what? What? How many people here have released a soundtrack? Is it a straightforward thing, my kind sir? No. Thank you for agreeing with me. This is one of the most ridiculous statements I've ever read, and I read a lot. Anyway, the article, which features the tweet, tells the story of the soundtrack, and we shall continue telling that story. So Mick Gordon did reply to the tweet and confirmed that there was problematic release with the soundtrack. You can see what he says. It's safe to assume from this tweet that he didn't get to present his full artistic vision, right? And it's also safe to assume that he did mix some of the tracks, but the ones he didn't mix, it seems to him that they don't have his endorsement. The reason for that, we can suspect it. It's the same reason that everything bad happens in games. The reason is that somebody set an arbitrary release date just because, and they did that without actually consulting with the composer, okay? So this is Marty Stratton's id Software's director post on Reddit, and the pixelated stuff, I'm not censoring anything, it's just that the paragraph is not directly below. Okay? It's just an impressionistic space. Okay, so Marty also comments about that, and he says, we grew increasingly concerned about Mick delivering the OST to us on time. Okay, Mick also mentions this, but he paints a quite different picture. And he says that he wasn't under contract during the time the release date was set, and I will talk about that in a minute. And what's worse, he learned about the soundtrack and the release date from a public E3 announcement. In his words, E3 events are planned months in advance, well-rehearsed, carefully managed, but nobody thought to discuss the OST with me in any way whatsoever. I learned about it in the media. So a major company working with one of the biggest franchises in gaming, and a game that has, in the original, in Doom 2016, had one of the most iconic soundtracks, They just do this announcement without consulting with the composer. I mean, they obviously thought that the soundtrack is important, otherwise they wouldn't include it in the announcement, but they just thought that it's okay, we don't need to talk to the composer about it at all. Here's a quote from a post by Matt Ombler on VG247 by Cody, who was standing here like 10 minutes ago. And he says, seeing the public react this way to a publisher just taking the music and running with it, it's kind of surprising. This is common behavior to us. It isn't something unusual. This is common behavior to us. It isn't something unusual. Keep that in mind. I will return to it. So, to demystify what's going on here, with most AAA titles, the creation of the in-game music and the OST album are two different jobs, and they're handled by two different contracts, or one contract but separate terms, okay? In addition to that, the composer usually hands over the rights to both in-game and OST versions entirely to the publisher. As you can see in the quote above, virtually all AAA music belongs to some sort of publisher, okay? Just out of curiosity, anyone here has taken the game audio industry survey at any time? It's mentioned there that no one, okay? You can look it up. It's worth taking if you work in the industry, if you're an audio person working in the industry. The amount is very different for indie games, obviously. In fact, if you're an indie game composer, there's a chance you haven't had to deal with this, like handing over your rights. It really depends. But in AAA, this is extremely common. It's also ridiculous, but well, that's just like my opinion, man. Okay, so Gordon did get his contract, and we read, I did everything possible to secure an OST agreement after the announcement. I'll bypass some of the stuff. I received the contract 48 hours before the game was released. Like, this is ridiculous stuff we're talking about here, okay? By the way, this is from Mick's post. You can find it online, and I'm not going to read everything on the screen. And the contract came with a caveat. That contract explicitly grants id Software complete creative control, and they had absolute authority on every decision. Now, to be fair, this is not unusual in these contracts, but these are terms that are included in the contracts because companies want to cover their asses. No company in their right mind would entirely bypass the composer. The composer has written the music, and they are the ones who know better than anyone else how to turn it into an album. Right? Wrong. Sorry, I shouldn't have passed the thing. As Mick says, id Software exercised creative control extensively, okay? So, let's move on. Remember what Cody said, this is common behavior to us. It isn't something unusual. Well, I don't know. I think it should have been unusual, and it seems that it was unusual for Mick, because as he says, the situation was opposite to my experience on Doom 2016. id Software didn't interfere in the production of that album at all. Okay, so now I'm gonna read a quote from Gamer Revolution that says the following. It's important, I'm gonna read the whole thing. Gordon did mix the Doom 2016 and Wolfenstein soundtracks, but both of these albums released multiple months after their respective games. This pattern shows that he likely needs a great deal of time to properly mix these tunes to be played outside the game. Well, no shit. I mean, what the fuck? It's possible that releasing the soundtrack this close to the game's release didn't quite fit into his regular groove of mixing game music, and is why he allegedly missed his deadline. Listen up, guys. When we go to the studio, we don't groove, we don't jive, we don't jam, we don't play with fucking cool toys and all that shit, all right? We work. And we work fucking hard. We have to organize and mix and master and sequence material that we've been grinding on for years. That's nobody's groove. Let alone when the game's release looms over us. Let alone when the material is of the intensity of Doom. I've added some other colorful stuff. You can read it. So no, Mick did not miss the deadline because it did not fit his groove. Okay? In fact, he didn't miss any deadline because you have to agree to a deadline before you can miss it. Okay? So, with that in mind, let's take another look at Marty's open letter to the incredible Doom community. We grew increasingly concerned about Mick delivering the OST to us on time. Time for what? Apparently a release date that nobody has agreed to, and the composer wasn't even under contract. I asked our lead audio designer, Chad, this is Chad Mossholder we're talking about, to begin work on id Software's version of the tracks. A backup plan should Mick not be able to deliver on time. Time for what? Now, why did id Software need the OST to release to coincide with the game's launch? If it wasn't an issue for the previous game, why was it now? My guess is that in the interim, between the two games, they realized that Mick's OST was an integral part of Doom's identity and, most importantly, a major commercial draw. If my guess is correct, then they should have talked to the composer about it. Okay, back to Marty. To complete this, the task, Chad would need to take all the music as Mick had delivered for the game, edit the pieces together into tracks, and arrange those tracks into a comprehensive OST. Now, Marty is talking about the in-game music here, which is delivered in disconnected assets, and Chad's task would be to splice those into long-form music pieces. And Mick mentions in the post that id Software had in their possession everything that he worked on, from raw recordings, DAW sessions, final exports, everything. And to me, the idea of a third party, another person, taking this material and making sense of it and trying to make it into coherent music without the composer's consultation, let alone make it into a comprehensive OST, this is ridiculous. And you can find some examples of how much of a bot's job this ended up being in Mick's post. And I want to be very clear here. I'm not laying blame on Chad Mossholder because, as I said, he had a very thankless task. His job was literally impossible, not virtually impossible. It was impossible. I don't envy him in the slightest. And to me, this shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how music works. And I'm not talking about, putting the melody and the chords and the stuff. I'm talking about the big picture stuff, like concepts like form, structure, sequence. A piece of music is not a bunch of clips. It needs to adhere to an internal logic, a sense of flow, development, needs themes, a sonic palette, contrast, an arc. These are things that not anyone can understand on Conjure. If you can control Pro Tools, doesn't mean that you can write music, okay? And the composer is the only one who knows how to make these pieces, these abstract pieces, into coherent pieces, because when he wrote them, he had that in mind, okay? So there are a lot of fundamental misunderstandings going on. So this is Marty's post. It goes on much longer. I do suggest that you read it. It's definitely worth reading. It paints a lot of interesting situations that went on. Look, I can totally understand a company offering feedback and proposing changes. That's perfectly fine. It's actually welcome. And on the flip side, the composer, of course, is going to get the developers and the publishers' approval when creating an OST, because the OST represents their game. But what happened here is some next level nonsense, okay, with the situation. I don't care how common it is. Actually, scratch that. Because it is so common is the reason I care. It shouldn't be common. It is entirely unacceptable. And of course, it's exactly what happened. Lo and behold, the album was released. It was still delayed, which is frustrating because it shows how pointless the release date was in the first place. The release was an exclusive for the collector's edition, and to this day, as I said, this is the only release the soundtrack has ever seen. No streaming, no digital, no physical sales, just 24 million views on Doomslayer's YouTube. Now, I could have come here and read to you the entire Mick Gordon post. It would be much more worth your time and much better than this garbled presentation, but I wanted to at least pretend that I've earned my ticket here. So I will strongly suggest that you read it. Not if you're a game composer or audio person. Anyone in the industry should read this post. If you're a game composer, it should be your homepage and you should read it before signing any contract. So let's move to the press. So the thing was covered in waves. The first wave came with Dominal Cross's tweet. You might think that this is a good thing, that the issue was given the spotlight. However, it's hard to believe that this coverage stems from genuine interest in game music. because unfortunately you'll be hard-pressed to find mentions of game music in the gaming press. Remember this line, I will come to it later. I'm not saying that the press shouldn't cover this. It is news and it should be covered carefully. The press should get hold of the music, consult with someone who actually knows a thing or two about music, ask the involved parties for comment, and get to the bottom of the story. However, what actually happened was that the press took the tweet and ran with it. In their defense, the tweet to the layman appears legit, and Mick Gordon did reply to it, which kind of makes it news in a way. But the tweet is actually mostly bullshit, a glossary of music engineering clickbait filtered through a person who has a very loose grasp of what they are actually saying. Now, I'm not here to shit on Dominal Cross. God knows I've shared my own bullshit online with quite the air of authority. I'm doing it right now. There's nothing wrong with a person making a mistake. And to be fair, Dominal Cross's conclusions are not off. The problem is that he's making those based on wrong assumptions and judging wavelength visually, all stuff that shouldn't be done and definitely should not be picked up by the press as if it's the word of God or whatever. And that's where the problem starts, okay? The second wave, oh, sorry, I should have clicked that earlier. The second wave came with Marty Stratton's Reddit post. The press definitely covered this, as it was indeed very juicy. Again, they should cover it. In my research, I did not find a single article that said, we reached out to Mr. Gordon for comment. The third and massive, massive wave of coverage, obviously, came when Mick Gordon posted his thing, which is extensive and very detailed, and rightfully so, because such an unprecedented post of what's going on was bound to be covered widely and extensively by the gaming press and essentially take the industry by storm, except that I'm bullshitting you because nobody covered it. They instead, if you try to look for coverage of Mick Gordon's response in the press, you will find this, which is Bethesda's response to Mick Gordon's response. So we need to fix that. In other words, does anybody know what this is? It is a wavelength of a sad trombone. Okay. Now, remember, you can see it now. Now, remember that VZ247 article I was talking about earlier by Matt Ombler? I want to make special mention to this because Matt is a journalist that cares a lot about video game music. If you are interested in video game music, you should follow him. This is Matt's article, and this is Matt's headline. Take a moment to read it. It is the only article I could find that puts this particular spin on the issue. And believe me, I searched a lot. Keep in mind, this is posted on April 22, so 3 days after the tweet. Remember how I said that press should consult an audio specialist before writing the topic? This is exactly what Matt did. And it's important to note here that VG247 is not a specialist website, okay? It's not a music website. But Matt did the work, posted the work, even if people might not understand what is being said. And that's what journalism should do. Okay, remember the article's title that said, highlights the mistreatment of video game music? Well, let's talk about a bit more mistreatment. So, in the 10 years that I've been doing this job, I've developed this particular twisted hobby, which is I search reviews and I control F and try to see if they mention music. And last year I made a video essay about it for the Game Music Festival, for Marius, who's here. The video is titled The Lack Thereof, and you can find it on YouTube. I will play to you a little experiment that was part of the video.
So let's start with a kind of experiment here. Let me just go online, search for a random games review. I want to open up a review from a major publication because that's where the issue is more prominent. I'm going to scan the article for the following terms: music, sound, and composer. So let's check it out.
If somebody identifies this music for me, I will, I don't know, give him €100.
IGN. I'm gonna do Control F. Music.
From LA Noire.
0 results on music. Let's do sound. 0 results for sound. Let's do composer, okay. 0 results for composer. Great. Let's do Banner Saga. Let's do Kotaku. Control F, composer. Nothing for composer. Let's do sound. Okay, we have 2 results for sound. It says here, on paper, the Banner Saga combination. Okay, this is not about sound. It just, anyway, let's do music. No result on music for the Banner Saga, which has music by Austin Wintory. What other game should we do? Should we do The Witcher 3? Polygon. Control F. For music, no mention of music. Composer? No. Audio? Nothing. Sound, I get 2 results, but I can't find them. Yeah, okay, so the sound results are in the comments. And it wasn't even about sound. Should we do another one? Should we try The Last of Us? Let's stress test this thing. Okay, I'm gonna open IGN again. Let's do music. Okay, we got 1 result. She'll pick through records at a music store. That's the mention of music in The Last of Us. Are you f***ing kidding me? Are you f***ing kidding me with this? I can't believe this. This went better than I expected. Sound, the first hit for sound and the only hit for sound is in a comment. And then let's do composer. The Last of Us, they don't mention The Last of Us composer. That's crazy. That's literally crazy. The Last of Us composer is Gustavo Santaolalla. And they don't mention them in the review. Anyway, this really went well. This went really well.
Guys, this is the reality of game journalism today. Game music just doesn't make the cut. Okay? If you doubt me, you can run this experiment on your own και άμα βρείτε τίποτα να κάτσετε να με γαμίσετε. Okay, but there are times that it's worse that they remember that game music exists. And for instance, there are times that they do their infamous best of lists. And I would really not mention this, but I had one of those best of lists arrive in my inbox this past week because I have Google alerts on my soundtracks just to see if anybody talks about them. And this is, okay. So, an article called Top 10 Moments in Games When the Music Went Insanely Hard. All right, and it's from Exputer, and I know you're going to say, what the fuck is an Exputer? I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's very representative though. So, the list, first of all, does not include any official link to stores or streaming platforms, which would potentially provide some income and or draw some audience to the composers, okay? Instead, we get embeds of YouTube videos. And as if that wasn't bad enough, very few of these videos are from official composer channels. Now, this site puts the final nail in the coffin with a spectacular move. 10 moments, 0 composers. It fails to name any of the composers in the article. This is next level bonkers. Guys, at this time with Spotify and Apple Music and everything in between, making a list about VGM and not including any official music links, it's bad. And game journalists, you need to do better than that, okay? And, okay, this is Exputer. The complete omission of composers' names would never happen if this was a major organization, right? Wrong. Let's go to the Game Awards. The Game Awards is a major organization which holds a glamorous annual ceremony. When it comes to music, literally every year they manage to fuck it up. I don't know how they do it. It's an art at this point. This year they've done something really that I love. They're doing the 10-year celebration concert, and they made a super nice video about it. So let's look at it a bit, just a minute.
What have you done with my sister?
The time of prophecy has come.
Become Elden Lord.
Did you see it? You saw it. Featuring performances by... and then drops a bunch of games. Are they fucking serious? What the... I have never seen a game performing. Okay? Games don't perform shit. All right. And they tweeted about it, and I tweeted about it, that I didn't expect anything better than that. And then my dear friend Oatmeal, I don't know him, he's just a guy, said that it's not like people are going to know composer names. They need to state the games to build marketing hype. Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Okay. Look, I get it that the game is the big draw, I understand. But it's a fucking video. You can put the name underneath if you want. And if you really don't give a shit about composers, just say featuring music from. You don't need to say performances. That's it, problem solved. It's not like people are going to know composers. Do people know John Williams' name? Do they know Hans Zimmer's name? Danny Elfman, anyone? Like, can you imagine going to a venue that has a concert that it doesn't have their name? Are we fucking serious? I'll use Oatmeal's reply to segue to the last part of the talk, which deals with the audience. And since Oatmeal replied to me directly, I'll stick with this motive and share some personal experience. But I think it applies to other composers. Now, this is a particularly painful subject for me because I have a very good relationship with my audience. And it takes a lot of work, but I mean it. I'm being serious now. I'm being Chris for a moment. There's nothing I enjoy more than exchanging opinions, tastes, influences, and ideas with them. And if you have ever left a comment on my YouTube channel, you know this. Unfortunately, none of you have. But never mind. But game audience do have a very particular relationship with game music. I'm talking about a phenomenon that I call assumption of ownership. And it is exactly what it sounds like. So here's an email I got a week ago, literally a week ago, after issuing a takedown on YouTube. Hello, I've recently been aware that my most recent video, Battle for BFDI, but only the contestants with plushies exist, have been taken down recently, due to a copyright infringement that has been requested by you due to the music I used. And there's a link to one of my Risk of Rain tracks. Now, I decipher that it'd be fair if you took the video down due to me not crediting the composer/music I used for said video, but that is not the case, good sir. Despite the fact that I gave full credit, the video was still taken down. Would I have to pay to keep the video up? Because I saw one video here, in the abstract of here-ness, that this person is using in very typical, sorry, I jumped, that this sorry, because what? Oh no, I hope my battery isn't dead. Anyway, I'll go without this. Doesn't matter. I saw one video that has the music used, but the video was never taken down. Did they give proper credit, or did I just not give thorough credit to the owner? Because there's proper and there's thorough. Thank you for reading it, etc., etc. Now, this faux legalese language that this person is using is very typical. I get it all the time. I guess they try to say that they know what they're talking about. Obviously, it's the exact opposite result. And 99% of the cases people repurposing music, the person actually assumes that giving credit is all that is needed for a legal use of the music in a video. And this is something that has been nurtured over many, many years of game music copyright existing in the Wild Wild West, essentially. And how did we come to that? If I had to pick two culprits, I'll have to say that it's one, publishers who still to this day refuse to release music officially to the public. That means that people take matters into their own hands, as they should, if you ask me. But if you're a person that is like born into this situation, you can't distinct between music that exists and music that doesn't exist. You just consider that I can upload whatever I want on YouTube and it's mine to use. I've had hundreds of situations where people said, well, I was using it for my D&D campaign. Well, why didn't you use my own upload then? And you had to upload it on your YouTube channel. Okay, so stuff like that. The other thing is that the video streaming culture and the platforms that enable it, primarily YouTube and, Twitch and secondarily YouTube, operated in this copyright black hole in which essentially game music was free for all to use and make money. And the attempts from both Twitch and YouTube to fix this were half-assed at best. YouTube's Content ID, I've had the pleasure of having to solve situations with my own music being claimed because somebody else put it through the system. And with DMCAs of Twitch, I remember fondly when that started happening because people turned on composers because they thought that we were doing the DMCAs. And I said on Twitter then that a simple case of monitoring and royalties distribution, just like we do for decades on radio and TV, would solve the problem. And it was the first time in my career that I got harassed on Twitter by accounts that did not even follow me, who felt the need to tell me how greedy I was, for some reason I don't know, and that I was unappreciative of the exposure I was getting from those leads, I mean the streamers. Okay, the practice is actually now implemented silently, nobody knows, nobody complained about it. Some pro organizations, BMI for example, tracks the most played games and sends out royalties to the composers. Look, I had a couple of other things, but because the video is out, I'm not gonna talk about, I wanted to talk a little bit about the 1 hour loop phenomenon, but it doesn't matter, it doesn't work without the pictures. So I'll leave you with the conclusion. Okay, so I want to suggest a couple of things because I don't want just to shit on stuff here. So in opposite order of appearance, here's my suggestions to composers. First, maintain an open and honest relationship with your audience. They are the ones who actually provide you with long-term sustainability. Okay, appreciate them, but don't let them bully you into stealing your music. If you see someone using your music in a way that you don't want them to, and that's for you to define. Maybe you disagree with my definition of that, that's okay. Speak up. If they don't understand, take action. You don't need to explain yourselves. You don't need to ask permission. You don't need to negotiate. Unfortunately, yes, many times, this will be between actual fans, genuine fans of yours. And these times are hard. You need to explain them. They won't understand. They are misguided. It doesn't matter. It is your music. Never lose track of that. Second, maintain an open and honest relationship with the press. When you see a review of your game that does not mention the music, let them know. Don't harass anyone. Just make a joke. I used to say that it's a shame that you got to play this on mute. It's just a line, you know? Have a sense of humor about it. It's not the end of the world anyway. This is games we're talking about. But be open about it. The worst thing that can happen, you can make friends with a game journalist. Okay, and the last thing, maintain an open and honest relationship with your collaborators. Think twice before handing out the rights of your music to a third party. The fact that it is common does not make it right. The majority of you will start your careers working in small dev teams and work your way up to major publishers. If that's what you want, it's not a measure of success. Establish your contracts now, early on. Don't let anyone tell you that it can't be done. I'm living proof that it can be done. And you know what the funny thing is? That when the time came to sign with a major publisher, they didn't have a fucking problem at all. It was just the way it was. They didn't have a problem. It was fine. Okay. Now, remember this thing. Your music is your legacy. If you want your legacy to exist on Doomslayer's channel, that's on you. I don't. Inside the game, your music should be an undivided part of it, every single note serving the game and the player. Outside of it, it should have your name on it, and no one should ever be able to touch its wavelengths without your permission, and thank you. Oh, I actually made it in time because the video stopped.
Thank you very much, Chris. We have any questions?
If somebody wants to ask me what software I use and hardware I use, they can go fuck themselves.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
I'd like to ask about Risk of Rain soundtrack.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's
No,
not
it's
about
fine.
the talks. I didn't play the game, but I heard the music. And
Thank you. Well, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Oh no, I mean, did you like it?
Yes,
Okay.
that's why I'm asking, because it may sound strange, but when I heard it the first time, I was sure it was from some Japanese game.
Okay.
It sounded so familiar. I don't know why. And
Is it Risk of Rain 1 or 2?
I think it was the Risk of Rain 1.
Okay.
The first track I heard was from the first one. And where did you take the inspiration from?
I'm really sorry to say I don't have any direct Japanese influences. I'm not gonna.
No problem. I just
I'm just saying. My main influences for the soundtrack are bands like Pink Floyd, Dream Theater. A lot of Daft Punk is in there. Stuff I used to hear when I was, growing up. Essentially, my core let's say, musical influences. And there's also a lot of, what I always say about the Risk of Rain stuff is that it is on a Baroque soundtrack, essentially, because there's so many things going on at the same time. And this is definitely just an influence of my studies, because I just love Baroque music a lot, and I'm a kind of classically trained so-called composer. So if that covers your questions.
Yeah.
I have made a Q&A video on my YouTube channel, which you can see and goes a little bit deeper into that, if you want.
Sure, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kind of an edgy maybe question. I'm well, composing in Visual Studio mostly, right? And so my question would be like, do you know who's the lead engine developer of Doom?
The lead?
Yeah, engine developer of Doom.
No, I'm sorry, I don't know it.
So just I was like listening to it, and don't you think that quite a lot of this feeling that music composers are not credited properly? And I definitely agree with that, by the way, because I love game music. It's not just because it's your area.
100%. In fact, I had a paragraph, I cut it for time. You are 100% correct. There's only one thing that I'm here to talk for the composers because I have to talk for the composers.
Sure,
I agree with you 100%. I would love to talk about audio designers too, because they are also taking a dump on them.
Yeah.
And you are 100% right. Do the talk. Do the talk. Somebody has to do the talk.
Next year, sure.
Yes, you should do it.
Yeah,
you should do it.
I know a really cool audio designer as well.
And I'm sorry that I haven't played the game, to be honest. But you're 100% correct. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the very deep presentation. Okay. Thank you very much for this track, and we have some break.